Hi, I'm Rick Green. I want to offer you an analogy that I've used to explain ADHD, or what it's like to get diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood. Now, ADHD is what you would call an invisible disability, in that you can't really see what's going on. And in fact, that's why a lot of people get to adulthood, like myself, before they find out what is going on. But it's also on a spectrum. So people will argue, well, everybody loses their keys. And that's true, but at some point it becomes a real problem, and then it's a disorder. It's a spectrum, but it's an invisible spectrum, or the symptoms are invisible. What if we took something that is visible, that's on a spectrum, like height? There's some very short people, there's some very tall people, there's people who are about 5'8", which is me, and average. So there's a spectrum of heights. But imagine if height was invisible. What if you couldn't see height? Nobody could tell that so-and-so is really tall. And instead of so-and-so, let's call him Tyler. Tyler is really tall. He's going into high school, first year, and all his buddies are signing up for the various activities, the clubs and the sports. And he looks around and he sees over at the gymnastics table, it's all these cute little girls, and he has a crush on at least 6 of them. And so Tyler figures, I'm going to try out for gymnastics. Gymnastics looks good. And so he tries out, signs up for gymnastics, and it does not go well. And the reason is he's 7 feet tall. He's really tall. And if you've ever seen any gymnastics, they're not really tall. And so he tries these different things, tries a cartwheel, tries stuff, and poor Tyler does so badly, all the girls giggle, all the guys laugh at him. And he says, I'll never do that again. Total humiliation. You know what it's like when you're a teenager. So then he looks around, and his buddies say, well, why don't you try out for this or that or this? And he goes, you know what, I'm not really a sports guy. Shuts it down, a whole area of expression. I'm not a sports guy. And he joins the chess club or the lighting crew. That's what I did. And then 20, 30 years later, he's at a party, and the host, you know how parties are, everybody gathers in the kitchen eventually, and he's in the kitchen. The hostess says, I need the chip and dip bowl. And he says, oh, okay, I'll get it. And he goes, here you go. And the room goes quiet. How did you reach that? You didn't even need the step stool. He says, well, I don't know. Here's the dip bowl. Oh my God, you see that? Incredible. Honey, he didn't even use the step ladder. And somebody in the room says, you know what? I've heard about this thing. It's called tallness. And I think you might have a case of tallness. They have a whole test you can take. It's called the tape measure. And so he takes the test and discovers he's 7 feet tall. Oh. And that explains why so much of his life was a struggle. It explains suddenly why every time they went to Grandma's house, he banged his head on the chandelier. And eventually Grandma said, don't bring him anymore. He's too destructive. He's not destructive. He's 7 feet tall. He bangs his head on door frames all the time. And everybody says, oh, he's attention getting, anger issues, problems at home. No, he's 7 feet tall. At the age of whatever, well, I was 47. Let's make him 35. He finds out he's tall, and he sees how this has affected his life, from gymnastics to grandmas to dates and all these different things. And then he suddenly thinks, somebody give me a basketball. And he takes the basketball, and he's not really ever played it, but and everybody, wow, slam. And suddenly it hits him. If only I had known sooner. If only I had known this before. Why didn't anybody recognize this? Why didn't anybody test for this? Why didn't we have tape measures back then? I know it's not a perfect analogy, but it does give you some sense of the shock of finally discovering that you're different, and there's a reason you're different. And it's not because you're aggressive or you want to upset grandma. No, it's because you're potential strength, 7 feet tall. And that's why everybody I've ever met with ADHD wishes they had been diagnosed sooner. I've heard 16-year-olds tell me, yeah, I wish I'd found out earlier. It's like, yeah, try 47. I have patrons who are in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, who are recently discovering they have this mindset. and suddenly making sense of their life. The favorite comment is, "This explains everything." Well, it doesn't really, but it sure feels like that for the first year or so because it explains so much. And once you know that you have ADHD or that you're 7 feet tall, that you're at the end of that height spectrum, well, now you can start to figure out things you're going to do to make life easier, places you're going to excel. I'm going to raise the door jambs in this house. We're getting rid of that low-hanging chandelier. Apparently there's an adult basketball league. I'm going to check it out. Thank you, Rick Green. That was Rick Green, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. Do like, share, comment if this has been your experience, and please feel free to use this analogy to explain it to anyone and everyone. Do follow, and if you want, become a patron and support this wonderful guy so he can make more videos and perhaps someday grow 7 feet tall and become a basketball player.